You can draw this in Procreate. You can draw this bubble tea in Procreate by just using the brushes that are already in the app, and of course by following this video all the way till the end. And do be sure that once you have reached the end to share your work on Instagram and tag me in the image, not just in the description, and I'll be able to find your work and perhaps we'll see it in the next You Can Draw This video. If you are enjoying these tutorials, then you can support this channel by either giving a thumbs up, leaving a comment, hitting that subscribe button, and of course, turning on the bell notification so you won't be missing the next You Can Draw This video. And if you have already followed all of the You Can Draw This videos and you want more, then you can check out my Patreon page, because there I have a lot more content, video tutorials ranging from beginner level to more advanced levels. But now let's get started and create a cute looking bubble tea. Our canvas is 2500 pixels by 2500 pixels, and I have created a color palette for you. In case you want to use the exact same colors I'm using in this tutorial, you can just download it through the link in the description. First thing we'll do during this tutorial is give a color to our background. We'll go to the layer menu and click background color. And we'll pick this light purplish color. Then we'll go to layer 1 and we'll start creating our bubble tea. To make a nice symmetrical looking cup, we will use the symmetry tool in this tutorial. Let's go to the wrench in the menu over here. And then turn on drawing guide. You can find it under canvas. Turn it on and then go to edit drawing guide. Now select symmetry here at the bottom. And that's how you turn on symmetry. You can just click done. And now whatever we paint on the left side of the canvas will also show up on the right side. You can also see it in the layer menu. You can see that this layer is assisted. That means that symmetry is turned on for this layer. For the color, we will use this second color here in the color palette, that nice looking purple. And for the brush, we will go to the calligraphy brushes and use the monoline brush. The opacity for this brush is set to 100% and the size is at 8%. We'll start by making the bottom and the top of our cup. Let's start at the bottom by drawing a horizontal line here. Let's start about here. Make a line to the other side and hold your pen in place. Now, if you put one finger on your screen, you can turn it into a perfectly horizontal line. And let's do the same thing at the top. Let's start a bit more to the left, so around here. And make a horizontal line again. Hold your pen in place. Tap one finger on the screen to make a perfectly horizontal line. And now we'll connect these two lines. Let's just start here at the bottom. Draw a line to the top. And hold your pen in place to let it snap to a perfectly straight line. And now we can fill the shape by dragging in the color. And for the next step, we are going to cut some parts off of this cup. We are going to make some indents in the cup. And we'll do that by using the eraser. Now, if you tap and hold the eraser, it'll switch to the brush that you're using right now. So that's the monoline brush. Let's click and hold the eraser. And now the eraser is also the monoline brush. We'll start at the bottom. Let's start about here. Make a little rounded shape here. That's the bottom of the cup, and then we'll see a little indent, or well, it sticks out a little bit here, so we'll go to the left and then let's go up diagonally. And in this case you can also use the snapping feature, making it a straight line, our eraser. Let's go to about here, and then we'll go to the outside again a little bit to about here. And again, let's make a line up to about here, a diagonal line. And then again, we're carving out our cup. And then finally, one more. and make a line here. Now we've cut off quite a big part of our cup. Now to erase that part that we just cut off, you can either use the eraser and just go ahead and erase everything, or we can go to the selection tool, that S-shaped ribbon, and use freehand. Now you can select every part here. And you can also just tap in each corner, making straight selection lines. And we can close it by clicking that circle here. Now we have made a selection, and if you use the 3-finger swipe, you can erase that part of your cup. And we can do the same thing on the other side. Selecting everything. And click the circle to close the selection. Use the 3-finger swipe, and there it's removed. Now you can tidy some parts up a little bit, make some parts a bit more rounded by using that eraser. And whatever you're doing on this side, it'll also happen on the other side, because we have symmetry turned on. Let's go up a little bit here. You can see we have a little bit of an indent here. It's not too tidy, so we can just go over, make that straight line, and then make it a bit rounded again here. You can just keep tweaking that cup. I like the way it looks. Now I want our bottom part to be a little bit rounded, and a way we can do that is by going to the magic wand and then using liquify. I have it set to push. Let's make it around 40% our brush, and we can pull down that center part of the bottom, making it a little bit more rounded. Like that. And then you can just click the magic wand again to get out of that menu. Next thing we'll do is create a lid for our cup. We'll do that on a separate layer, so let's go to the layer menu and click the plus to create a new layer. For the brush, we will still be using the monoline brush, and for the color we will pick this third color in the color palette. And now we will create an oval at the top here. Just draw an oval, hold your pen in place until it snaps to a quick shape, and then you can click edit shape here at the top to adjust it a little bit. I don't want it to be too rounded. I want it to be quite flat, a bit like this. And now to make sure that it's exactly centered, we can go to the arrow to the move tool, and if you set it to snapping, you can make it snap to, well, the exact middle of your canvas. And we can tap here at the top to move it up just a little bit. I think this is the perfect place, and you can just tap that arrow again to get out of that menu. So here we have the bottom of our lid. Let's fill it by dragging in the color. And now let's create a new layer to create the top part of that lid. So we'll go to the layer menu again, click the plus for a new layer, and we will still be using that monoline brush and the same color. Now we'll make an oval that's a bit smaller than this one. So let's draw an oval, hold your pen in place to make it snap, and use edit shape at the top to make it a bit smaller. I want it to be slightly smaller than the bottom oval. And move it down a little bit. And again, to make sure that it's exactly centered, you can go to the arrow, make sure that you have it set to snapping, and just let it snap to the center. And you can tap like this to move it down a little bit. And just click the arrow to get out of that menu again. And now we can fill the shape by dragging in the color. And now we want to fill that little gap between the bottom and the top part of the lid. So we'll go to the bottom lid layer, click it, and turn on Drawing Assist. That means that now symmetry is turned on for this layer. Let's zoom in a little bit. And let's just use that monoline brush to fill that gap here. And you can see that the same thing has happened on the right side. And now let's turn off that drawing assist, that drawing guide. Let's turn it off by going to the menu, to canvas, and then turning off drawing guide because we really don't need to see that line. Next, we'll create a straw. Let's make a new layer for that. So we'll go to the layer menu and create a new layer on top. So first click layer 3, then the plus for a new layer. And for the color, we will pick this one right here at the bottom left. First thing we'll do is create a little oval. So create that oval, hold your pen in place, and click Edit Shape in case you want to adjust it a little bit. Let's place it about here. And now let's duplicate this oval. You can do that by swiping down with 3 fingers and clicking Duplicate. And now we can drag it up like that to create the top part of the straw. And now let's use the monoline brush and make 2 lines connecting these 2 ovals. You can hold your pen in place to let it snap to a perfectly straight line. And you can even use Edit Shape if you need to move it around a little bit. And once you have those lines, you can merge these layers by squishing them together. And then you can drag in the color to fill that straw. And now you might find that your straw is a little bit too thick. I think this one is a bit too thick. You can just go to the arrow tool, to the move tool, and you can adjust it a little bit. Let's go to freeform and let me turn off snapping. And now we can just make it a little bit thinner and move it around. And if you go to distort, we can even move it sideways a little bit if you use that middle handle over here. Then click the arrow to get out of there. And there we have a nice looking straw. And now we already have a nice base for our bubble tea. Let's get started adding some milk to our tea. Let's go to the layer menu by clicking the 2 squares and then go to that layer with the cup on it. Now we'll click the plus to make a new layer, and we'll set this layer to clipping mask. Now this layer is clipped to our cup, and whatever we paint on this layer 5 will only show up on that cup shape. So nothing will end up on the outside. We are going to add some milk using this white, almost white color. And for the brush, we will go to Textures and use Dove Lake. The opacity of this brush is set to 100% and the size is at 19%. And now let's add some milk by going over, mostly over the bottom part of the cup. You can see we're getting this nice texture, which isn't exactly looking like milk. A way to fix that is by going to the magic wand and using Gaussian blur. Click layer and now slide to the right with your pen and blur this a little bit. I'm at 5% right now. Now let's add some more milk by going to the brushes again, then to elements, and then use the clouds brush. We'll still be using the same color. The brush is set to 100% opacity and the size is at 11%, but you can play around with that. Now let's add some more tea. Mostly going over that underside. I want to leave some purple at the top. So it won't be adding too much there. And again, you can use the magic wand and the Gaussian blur set to layer to blur this layer a little bit. And I'll go for 4.5%. Now that we have our milk, I want to add some shadow and highlight to our cup. We'll also do that on separate layers, so let's click the plus for a new layer. And again, set this to clipping mask, so nothing will end up on the outside of that cup. And we'll set this layer to multiply. Just click the N, and then scroll up to multiply. And for the brush, we will go to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. For the color, we will pick that purple color that we used for the cup. The opacity of the brush is set to 40%, and the size of the brush is set to 2%, so it's pretty small. Now I'll be rotating the canvas a bit, and I want to create these shadows for these indents on the cup. So we'll go from this little indent to the other side, creating a bit of a bended line. And we're on a separate layer, so if it's not working out the first time, you can just erase it and try again. And it's a low opacity brush. It's at 40%, so you can make multiple strokes building up this little shadow line. And if you're having trouble making a fluid line, it can help to zoom out a little bit more, because it's easier to make a small fluid line than a very big one. Let's move to the bottom part here. I want to line from this side to that side. And it's slightly bended. And here at the bottom as well. Now we can make the brush even a little bit smaller. I'm going at a big 1%. And then you can just use that line that you just created. Go over it, making it a bit more crisp looking. Just go over it like that. Here at the bottom as well. That's looking good. Now you can make the brush a bit bigger for some bigger shadows. First, I'll go to 4% for a little bit of a shadow underneath that lid. Just go over that underside of the lid, creating a slight drop shadow there. And now I'll go even bigger to 8%. And we'll add some shadow on the right side of the cup. Imagining that the light is coming from the left side here, so we'll have a shadow on this side. And here at the bottom. Like that. Now we'll do the same thing with the lights. Let's create a layer for that as well. We'll go to the layer menu, click the plus, and again use clipping mask so we won't be spilling any milk here. Click clipping mask and we'll set this layer to screen. So click the N and then select screen. Now we'll pick another color. We will use that bright, almost white color. And let's make the brush a bit smaller again. We'll go for a small 3%, 2%, something around there. And let's add some light here to the left side. Just a line going down. Here at the bottom as well. Let's go even smaller for our brush. Let's go to a small 2%. Just create a little line on each part of that cup. Then a line going down. You can use that quick shape tool, so hold your pen in place to make a nice straight line. And you can do the same here. And let's also brighten up this bottom part by going over there. And we can add some highlights here. Let's make a line and a short line. And here as well, a longer line and a short line. And a little one here at the top. And you can also make the brush a little bit bigger, just like we did earlier, to around 5%. And go over some areas, lightening it up a little bit. Because this is where the light is hitting the cup. So the light is coming from this side, so here we'll have light, and on this side we'll have shadow. Now let's add some of those bubbles to our bubble tea. We'll do that on a layer underneath this light and dark layer, but on top of that milk. So let's click layer 5, click the plus for a new layer, and for the brush we will go to artistic. You can find it here and use the hearts brush. And for the color, we will use this nice orange. The brush is set to 100% opacity and the size is at 2%. And now let's add a variety of bubbles here. You can make circular motions and make some big and some smaller bubbles. Some will be squished against the outside of the cup. And some will be a bit more in the middle of the cup, so you won't see them that good. You will only see a tiny part of it, a little dot. So vary the size of these bubbles. And just continue moving to the right, adding these bubbles. And they'll be concentrated at the bottom of your cup. They've all floated down to the bottom. And one there. To make them merge with the milk a bit more, what you can do is add a layer mask to the layer. You can click the layer, click mask, and now you can paint with black on this layer mask to mask parts of these bubbles. We'll set it to a pure black. And if we zoom in, we can still use the same brush and just go over the outsides of these bubbles a bit with low pressure and merging them a bit more with the milk or with the tea or with both. It's like tea with milk, right? And I remember thinking, well, the first time I saw bubble tea, I thought these bubbles, that those were like chocolate bubbles. It was kind of disappointing when I found out that it wasn't chocolate. Just making some little indents here. Merging them with the drink. So you don't want those very hard outlines. You want some of that milk seeping through, covering a part of that bubble. And if you feel like you have removed too much of your bubble, if you've used too much of that mask, you can just switch to white and then you can paint it back in on your layer mask. Whatever is white on the layer mask, that'll be visible, and whatever is black will get masked. I think that's looking good. Now let's move to the lid. First, let's go to the top part of the lid. That's this layer. Let's click it and turn on alpha lock. When you use alpha lock, you lock the layers not the layers. You lock the pixels on your layer and you'll only be able to paint on the pixels that are already there. And the rest, that checkerboard pattern, that's locked. You can't paint on that. Let's go to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush to add a highlight here. The brush is still set to 40% opacity. And for the size, let's go to 10%. And for our color, we will use this very light, almost white color. And we'll add a light to this left side of the lip, because remember, the light is coming from the left, so this part will be a bit lighter. So let's glaze over that and make that a bit lighter. And while the light is coming from here, that straw will block a part of the light and make a little bit of a shadow on top of that lid. So let's pick a darker color. We'll pick this one. And let's make the brush a bit smaller. Let's say 4%. And let's add a little bit of a shadow. And we can go even smaller for our brush. Perhaps 3%. And here near the bottom of that straw, let's make a slight shadow. Next, let's move to the bottom part of the lid. We'll have to turn off drawing assist because we don't want this, well, we don't want it symmetrical because the light is coming from this side and we don't want light on both sides. So let's click the layer and turn off drawing assist, but let's turn on alpha lock because we don't want to paint outside of that shape. First, let's add a bit of a shadow to this right side by still using the color that we were just using for that little drop shadow. And for the other side, let's pick that light color for the light. Let's make the brush a bit bigger again, 7%. And let's go over this side, adding some light. Now I want to go to that even lighter color, that milk color. Let's make the brush a bit smaller. Let's go for 1%. And let's add some lines to this lid, to that edge. Making lines going up. Adding some texture to that lid. Going all the way to the right. Going a bit more diagonally here on the side. So in the center they'll go up straight. And as you move towards the outside, they'll be more diagonal. And we can also add a little bit of a highlight to the top part. Let's go to that layer 3 and go over that edge here. You can make the brush a bit bigger. Go to 7%, adding a slight highlight there. Now for our straw, that needs a bit of depth as well, right? Let's go to the straw layer. That's layer 4 right here. And again, let's turn on alpha lock so we won't be able to paint outside of that straw. So click the layer, click alpha lock. And for the color, we will pick this grayish purplish color. Let's make the brush pretty small. Let's go for a small 2%. Let's make a straight line from the top to the bottom. Hold your pen in place to make it snap to a straight line. And then you can go a bit bigger for your brush to around 3% and go over it again for a softer looking highlight. And with just 2 strokes, you are giving depth to that straw. We're almost there. Let's add a little drop shadow to our bubble tea. Let's click the plus for a new layer. And we'll want to drag this layer all the way to the bottom so we can add a shadow there. We'll still be using the soft brush. And for the color, we will pick this brownish color over here. Let's rotate the canvas a little bit just to make it easier to make the strokes. And now let's go over that underside, making horizontal, or actually, well, in this position it's diagonal, but let's make these horizontal strokes. And it'll stick out here on the right side a bit because that's where the shadow will be, because the light is coming from this side. So we'll make it a bit darker there. Let's go a bit bigger for a brush. 6%. And you can also soften the shadow a little bit by going to the magic wand, using Gaussian blur and clicking layer. And drag to the right to soften that shadow a little bit. But you do want to make sure that here near that bottom edge, that it's a bit darker there. So let's go make the brush a bit smaller, 2%. And we'll want a dark shadow just underneath that cup where it is touching the underground. Like that. If at this point of the process you're feeling that the shape of your whole bubble tea is a little bit off, if you feel like it's too broad or too narrow, you can always adjust it. Zoom out a little bit. You can always just select all of the layers. Do be sure to turn off alpha lock on the layers where it's turned on. So we'll click these layers and turn off alpha lock. And now if you select all of the layers by swiping to the right, like that, selecting all of them, you can go to the arrow tool, to the move tool, click freeform, and you can just adjust your bubble tea without undoing all of the work that you just did. And of course, you shouldn't go too extreme. You shouldn't be making it super thin or super broad, but tiny adjustments on the entire image can be made by selecting every layer. I'll go to uniform, making it a little bit bigger while keeping the same ratio. And I think I like it like this. As a final touch, we can give a little bit of cuteness to our bubble tea. Let's do that on a new layer. So I'll click the top layer, then click the plus for a new layer. And for the brush, we will go to the calligraphy brushes again and use the monoline brush. Then I'll pick this gray color over here and let's draw a circle for an eye. Hold your pen in place. Tap one finger on the screen for a perfect circle and drag in the color to fill it. Now let's add a highlight to this eye. I want to use pure white for that, so I'll double tap here in this corner to select pure white. And let's add a little dot here for a highlight. To add a little bit more depth, I'll also be adding a shadow to that top part of the eye. I'll turn on alpha lock first, so we won't be able to paint outside of that eye. And for the color, we will pick this near black color. And I'll go over that edge, adding a slight shadow there. And now that we have this eye, we can easily just duplicate it by swiping down with 3 fingers again, clicking duplicate, and moving it to the right. If you want to make sure that it's going in a straight line to the right, then let's click snapping or magnetics, doesn't really matter. And that way you can make sure that it's at the same height as the other eye. Let's click the arrow to get out of here. And let's check these eyes. We can select them both in the layer menu by swiping to the right on that other eye, and then you can go to the arrow again to move them around together. Let me turn off snapping. because I want to place them wherever I want. I think around here looks nice. And then we can create a new layer. Click that top layer, then click the plus, create a new layer for a tiny little mouth. Let's go back to that gray color that we used. And let's make a little mouth. You can hold your pen in place to let it snap to a perfect shape. And you can use edit shape to adjust that mouth a little bit, move it around. And then click the brush again to get out of that menu. And there we have our cute little bubble tea. I hope you have enjoyed following this tutorial. Let me know in the comments. And if you want more, be sure to check out my other You Can Draw This videos here at YouTube, my more advanced tutorials at Patreon, or my classes at Skillshare. Have fun creating and have a wonderful day.